Super.
Where are you? Yes!
Locke knocks him from behind.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Shaku Brothers. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, on whichever lost island world you find yourself within the vast seas of the 10 quarters of samsaric existence. Whatever karmic flight crash landed you on the shores of Jambudvipa, whichever provisional Dharma station instruction video led you here, all are welcome to the Oceanic vow. Amida Buddha, through the Ultimate True Dharma Initiative, has been broadcasting incessant iterations of his signal for at least the last 10 kalpas to all beings everywhere, no matter what part of the islands of samsara you're lost upon. Amida Buddha sends his vow ship to rescue you, no matter whether you're a member of the evil others, a hapless stranded passenger, a member of a nefarious foundation and its dodgy NGO affiliates, or just a plain old slusho addict. Amida's light reaches all and eventually will rescue all beings. So welcome. Welcome. I'll bring in my guest for today is Myoshin on the Shaku Brothers.
Hello,
we have Nama Amida Butsu. Welcome. Yeah, we have a bit of a themed discussion, as you might have surmised already. But before we begin, I'm just going to consult the Dharma Initiative's operation manual so that we can have the just get the rules of Shaku Brothers. So we'll consult the Dharma Initiative Lamppost operations manual. The rules of Shaku Brothers. 1. Only talk about authentic Jodo Shinshu and Buddhism. 2. Only talk about authentic Jodo Shinshu and Buddhism. If someone questions, expresses doubts, or has barriers, the dialogue begins. Anyone can engage in authentic, sincere, humane, civil discussion. As many texts and readings as possible, please. No scholarly debates, no listening over hedge. Discussions will go on as long as they have to. If this is your first time on Shaku Brothers, you have to pick the topic. So there you go.
Yeah.
Now, since this isn't either of our first time on Shaku Brothers, obviously, we've chosen the topic together.
Yeah, I think I've been here a couple of times before.
Yeah, a couple of times, just a few. So yeah, did you wanna talk about the topic? I've already hinted, given some hinting as to the topic, but obviously, did you want to introduce the topic, Myoshin?
Yeah, sure. Basically, the topic is the fact that for the last 10 kalpas or more, Amida Buddha has been literally transmitting or directing the name for all sentient beings to hear. And this is the idea behind, you saw in the video that, the signal was being received finally by I can't remember his name.
Saeed, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so that's basically what we're going to be talking about is Amida's signal, his transmission of his of the primal vow, which is embodied by the name Namo Amida Butsu, and are hearing it or listening, because the actual hearing it is the point where you entrust. That's the point where you've actually heard it, when you actually entrust to the vow and the people working with the vow. But essentially speaking, that's what we're talking about today, and perhaps some of the difficulties you know, because this all sounds very simple, but it's actually a lot harder to truly hear the vowel than what you might think, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. It's and I've often talked about in my experience in my sort of videos how almost feel like I'm a receiver. I'm a shortwave radio receiver, and Amida Buddha is doing the tuning. Is tuning me in. And we've talked about how I've have some shared experience here of, how he's used Mita's used various means to tune us in to that, and so we'll get into some of that
Yes.
in
Yeah.
our discussion, and then the problem comes in. The way I want to frame the discussion is that's to me that's kind of the theme of the discussion is Amita tuning us in.
Yeah.
Tuning ours. We're the shortwave radio, and Amita's tuning us into his frequency, and with his signal, tuning us into his signal, and the problem comes in when I try to calculate the frequency.
Yes.
When I grab the dial, I start trying to, when I start trying to grab the controls. That's with my own calculations and trying to calculate the signal. Then then there's issues. So that's kind of the symbolic kind of way, metaphoric way, analogous way. I wanted to kind of frame the discussion. So yeah. So is there any particular place you wanted to begin? I've got a few different passages we could read, or letters and such that we could read. But I think you had you had it in mind to discuss the definition of Hakurai calculations at the Shinran Works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you want to do that first, or do you want to do some other readings first?
I think it might be nice to do that first because
okay. I've got it ready.
Basically, the main problem is that it's our minds from beginning this past is just geared towards all kinds of calculations and doubts and whatnot, and it isn't until that is set aside can we really hear this signal.
yeah, exactly. That's the issue. That's the main issue in us. The signals the signal's already there. The light is shining. It's being transmitted. Nothing blocks it. Nothing interferes with it. It's already here. It's already, but we calculate, and we can't hear it, or we can't see it, or we can't experience it properly because of our calculations, not because
it's not because the meter's holding back or anything like that. It's because
it's impeded somehow by anything.
It's an unhindered light,
exactly.
And that's why he's the best one to know how to get us past the calculating bit. Even that.
Exactly.
We start to calculate how do we get past the calculation.
Exactly. So I've got the definition up here of the Shinran Works shinranworks.com website. We're so grateful to have this resource, and that it's just out there for everyone, free to read and look upon and use, and then we have this glossary that is amazing. I've been mining it.
It's really helpful. Like the explanation on Shinjin and whatnot. That is, putting Shinjin in about 3 or 4 paragraphs, and somehow somebody managed to do that.
Exactly. But they did actually. Now I look at it, there's multiple entries in the glossary that relate back to Shinjin. So in a sense, there's that one, but really there's tons of the other glossary entries that are related to another aspect of Shinjin. But because I went through, I was like, oh yeah. Anyway, but it's just so great to have that, to have like the scholarship of the Hongwan-ji and the BCA that have come up with this glossary, and the scholarship that kind of that kind of collated and condensed and put together, the different, different aspects of the teaching into these definitions, these glossary definitions. It's pretty great. So anyway, so did you want to start off the reading? Can you see that?
I can see that very well. Yep. Okay. Calculation, or hakurai. Hakurai is the noun form of a verb meaning to deliberate, analyze, and determine a course of action. It further means to arrange or manage, to work out a problem, to bring a plan to conclusion. In Shinran's more common usage, it is a synonym for self-power. It refers to all acts of intellect and will aimed at achieving liberation. Specifically, it is a Shin practice's efforts to make himself worthy of Amida's compassion in his own eyes, and is clinging to his judgments and designs, predicated on his own goodness for attaining religious awakening. And I think, just to briefly stop there, I think that's really important, because that is really explaining calculation. Or we tend to think how a bit like what Shinran says in I think it's in the Talent Show, where he talks about people who think, I'm just not good enough. It can't really be this simple, I'm just not good enough to be accepted by me. So you go through all these calculations of maybe I should be doing this, maybe I should be doing that, and it tends to disguise itself as other things, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But calculation, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
But calculation in its essence is you trying to work out, okay, yes, I understand this is what the primal vow is all about, but how do I get to that part? What do I have to do in order to come up to, is there a standard I have to come up to? Is there like a step program or something like that? Do you see what I mean? So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's the manual? What's the procedure, to get there? How can I, it's lots of different things, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just one, specific thing that you can be that you'll be calculating about that will, not allow you to entrust or, well, Amida actually enables us to entrust, but it just takes a lot of different forms. So,
shall I carry on reading, or?
Yeah. Do you want to, or I can do the next paragraph, or is up whichever? I don't know. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. You can continue. Yeah.
For Shinran, salvation lies rather in the complete entrusting of oneself to the primal vow, which works to bring about the attainment of Buddhahood by the person of evil. I think this is why the twofold conviction is really, really important, because, like you said before, like we've been discussed before with Kyokan, it's the realization that actually not only is there nothing you can do, but there's actually nothing he wants you to do either. There is no, except, without striving, this disentrusting. This working is Amida's hakurai. Hakurai then possesses two opposed meanings as a synonym for both self-power and other power, and its usage reflects the core of Shinran's religious thought, where one's calculated thinking and Amida's working are experienced as mutually exclusive. Great compassion illumines everyone at all times, but any contrivance to attain enlightenment by cultivating one's own virtues or capabilities, whether through moral action or religious practice, will bind one to it, making sincere trust, shinjin, impossible. Only when a person realizes his or her true nature as a foolish being, all of whose acts and thoughts arise from blind passions, does he awaken to the great compassion that grasps him just as he is. To know oneself and to know Amida's compassion are, in fact, inseparable aspects of the same realization, and one awakens to them simultaneously. In this awakening, one's own Hakurai disappears, and entrusting oneself to Amida's vow actually comes about for the first time. Thus, Shinman states, no working, practices Hakurai or calculation, is true working, Amida's Hakurai. Or,
Yeah. Did you want to say anything about that paragraph? There's quite a bit in there. That's quite a bit.
Well, it goes back
Quite a
to
paragraph.
conviction. You know, it goes back to the whole thing of realizing one thing, and on the back, you know, at the same time, realizing Amida's is actually Amida's compassion and his working 100%.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
when those two things hit you, then you know that's when the entrusting begins.
Exactly. And I like that it's, you know, the way it's framed as, you know, or discussed as Amida's Hakurai,
Yes.
Amida's calculations. So
Yeah.
whose calculations are going to be better, really?
Right. Yours or Buddha's.
Exactly. I mean, do the math, pardon the pun. It's you know, his Amida Buddha's, you know, superior, highest, inconceivable wisdom versus my bamboo, deluded, ignorant, blind passioned mind calculating way. Like, it's just, there's no comparison. There's no, but that doesn't stop us.
No, not at all. I mean, this is in fact the most amazing in my view, the core of Pure Land Buddhism, Jodo Shinshu, is that Amida saves us. He grasps us never to abandon us for no other reason than his great compassion, you know, his great love and his great compassion. That's why he does it. I mean, that's it, 100%. You know, there is no other reasons and I think in a lot of ways we have difficulty sort of like thinking, we're kind of resistant to that because we're not used to that sort of that level of selfless, you know, compassion.
Yeah. No. Well, it's you know, we can't comprehend it.
No.
Even though it makes sense that it's the true Buddhism. It makes sense that that's the true way of Buddha. That's the true Buddha-do, as it were. That's the true. Is they just give their wisdom and compassion ceaselessly, without any hesitation, or, you know, there's no, it's just given freely. But we can't see it. We couldn't see it. So the Buddhists came up with all kinds of provisional ways to help us kind of start to see it, and to bring us there in different ways according to our karmic causes and conditions. But then eventually we got Dharmakara. You know, eventually the Buddha mind just decided, okay, we need let's bring him Dharmakara, let's bring him Amida. You know, we needed that form to at least have something to look at, something to somewhat kind of grasp, and a direction to go. You know, we get the West. Go west, young man.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because ultimately the provisional means won't get us there.
No, that's right.
It depends on, I mean, for extraordinary beings, you know, in certain times and certain, you know what I mean, places, they can and have, you know, if they're born in the time of a Buddha and all of that. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the vast majority of us, for us ordinary, ignorant, foolish beings,
Mm.
it's not gonna get us there.
No, no. It's impossible for us. I have come to the conclusion that, unless Mida gets me to his Pure Land, it's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? Because I have nothing within myself at all that will do it. I can't. I simply cannot do it. I cannot attain the supreme enlightenment through myself in the path of sages, or even get to the Pure Land. But anything I can do, it has to be a Mida. It's this great compassion. The reason why he does it is just out of great compassion. It's pure great compassion.
Yeah, and wisdom.
Yeah, and wisdom.
The ultimate wisdom and compassion beyond inconceivable levels.
True wisdom is based on great compassion. Do you know what I mean?
You don't really have one without the other.
Yeah,
yeah. So this one the last bit of that paragraph, the last two sentences, says, to know oneself and to know Amida's compassion are in fact inseparable aspects of the same realization. One awakens to them simultaneously. In this awakening, one's own Hakurai disappears, and entrusting oneself to Amida's vow actually comes about for the first time. Thus, Shinran states, no working practicer's Hakurai is true working Amida's Hakurai. So that's kind of talking about, you mentioned the beginning of this paragraph. Before we started reading this one, you mentioned about the twofold conviction. And that's kind of in there, to know oneself and to know Amida's compassion are in fact inseparable aspects of the same realization. It's kind of a mind-blowing way that it puts it.
yeah.
And awakens to them simultaneously. It's kind of like this the passage or the teaching that we're born in Pure Land by becoming none other than our foolish selves.
Yes.
It's that, immediate twofold conviction all at once. Boom. You can't really do one part. You and I both said, I've got the one part of it. I've got the first part of the twofold conviction down, but we don't really, because if we did, we'd have, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
We I think settled Shinjin would, and that's not of our doing. It's just, Amida's working. But do you see what I mean?
I think there's a grasping of the whole thing intellectually, but you need that intellectually. But where it really needs to be is deep down in here.
Exactly.
And that's the point. That's the point where the entrusting, when you really, really know it.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to go from sort of just mind, intellectually, to mind heart. That term, that kind of mind heart. It's the same. That meaning of mind. It means mind heart. It's the true, the deepest, on the deepest level, as you say.
Yes.
It's got to go. Or like Paul Roberts used to say, understand. First, we understand the teachings with the head, and then we gotta understand it with the heart. It's got to come into the heart. It's got to be truly kind of known through Amida's power.
Yeah.
And it takes time. That's what we're talking about here. We're getting tuned in. And I think it's it's a necessary step. Kind of, at least for me, has been to see the quote unquote the first part of the equation. Because if if I didn't see I was a bamboo, if I didn't really start to see I was a bamboo, and that's all through Amita's light anyway, and that shining his light on my reality, the reality of my situation. But it has to start somewhere, If I don't see that, I don't start to see what it means to be a bamboo, if I don't start to see what what it means to be a foolish being with no merit and no capacity to do provision, self-powered teachings and why am I wouldn't have any need for Amida. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
If I didn't see I was a foolish being, if I couldn't see that, and then why would I? Do you see what I mean? I wouldn't have felt the need to pursue Pure Land in the first place. I wouldn't. Do you see what I mean? I'd just be like, well, I'll just keep trying these.
But a lot of
other practices.
Yeah, but a lot of that is to do. I don't think we fully realise just when I mess them in, and it takes a good doctor. Yeah. The Buddha's often compared to being like a doctor to give you a proper diagnosis and for you to realise, oh, actually, no, I'm actually quite ill. And then you'd be into the app. That's why I need the medicine of the primal vow.
Yeah, exactly. And it's similar. I think there's a similar thing too. There's the process of there's a denial too. Even when if you might have just to continue with that metaphor of you have a really serious illness, life-threatening illness, and at first some people go into denial.
Yeah.
About it, oh, it's not that bad, or oh, I'll just, do you know what I mean? It's I just need to get healthier, or I'll just I just won't think about it, or do you know what I mean? Like there's a similar, and it's a similar process, I think, when coming around to starting to see, I mean, it's hard to be a Buddhist, I think, and not start to look at that in general, even if you're not, any path of Buddhism kind of starts with, you're in a mess,
Well, absolutely. I mean, you try some of the practices like meditating or whatever the case, and you read about these amazing sages who are able to meditate for like 3 or 4 hours a day, and you're having problems concentrating for more than about 5 minutes, and that tends to be your first indication. Well, actually, maybe after trying to do this for a few months, maybe I just you start to realize. I think in one of the it talks about the fact that these various practices are actually designed to slowly show you, that you can't do it.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, to lead you towards, the trusting in reader and whatnot.
Exactly. All the various upaya of Amida to point us in the right direction. So it's that process. It's definitely a process to get there, I think, or for Amida to bring us there. And it takes what it takes. It's one of those, it takes what it takes. I mean, it's taken a long time for us to come to this lifetime where we're able to even, have this conversation about it. Do you know what I mean? All those lifetimes of Amida's, kind of arranging of good causes from the past of his upaya in multiple countless lifetimes, for us, to come to finally come to a birth where we, a rebirth where we can truly encounter the teaching, and have a good teacher, and the fivefold, and have the conditions of the environmental conditions of the fivefold teaching, happen, so that we can actually encounter this thing. So it's a process before this lifetime, even of Amida tuning us in. He's been tuning us in for at least 10 kalpas, at least 10 kalpas, I mean, probably the Buddha, the Buddha, the original Buddha of, of beginningless past before that, trying to, you know what I mean, trying to tune us in. So it's, it's been a long process,
It's
long.
also, I think, for a lot of people, I know I include myself in this category, it's frustrating as well. You
Yes.
just need patience, and I don't know about you, but I'm kind of like, yes, there are some things I have patience about, but this, I know, particularly over the last few months, that things have happened which were, just built up a level of frustration where I thought, okay, and you start to wonder, am I even on the right Pure Land path? This is was my thinking and what I've tried, a couple of the other more traditional versions of Pure Land, just to find out that no, actually I was on the right path to begin with. I was just frustrated and desperate.
Exactly. Exactly.
I know you've had similar,
I was going to say, yeah, I've had similar things, not just with Pure Land Buddhism, with other forms of Buddhism, where I said, um, but also other forms of Pure Land Buddhism, where for one reason or other, I just wasn't getting it, or there was something I perceived I need to explore this or that.
yeah,
To try to understand it, and and for um, because of that very difficulty of just having to let go of the dial. That difficulty in Jodo Shinshu teaching is very much, we don't need to touch that dial. We don't need to try to, we don't need to, there's nothing we need to do. And that's tough. It's just tough. It was just, I couldn't, I just, that was one of the hardest things. In addition to all the other, doubts and questions, and barriers and distractions and things. But but yeah, I would, so for instance, I would go to the reason I brought all that up about the Jodo Shinshu, there's, it's all Amida, it's all Amida. Amida gives us his mind, Shinjin, and through nothing on our own. And I looked to other Pure Land paths, and they were, essentially saying, it's total reliance on Amida, but here's some things you can do. With the saying the name, with some other things. There's some things you can, concrete things. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Yes, yes.
And
yeah.
Where I could, and this was before I was ready to really Dharma dialogue. It took me a long time to even get to that level of trust and confidence, to trust in the path of Jodo Shinshu before I could say, oh, there's plenty to do. There's plenty, deeply, and there's plenty that's involved with deep listening. There's plenty, you know what I mean? There's plenty of concrete things you can do. And there are things we do, but it's just not self-powered.
Yeah.
It doesn't depend. That's the difference.
Yeah.
The things in Jodo Shinshu that we practice, that we, do, it's not dependent on self-power. It's all enabled by Amida, where it's all our ability to listen deeply is Amida. It's our ability to reflect deeply is Amida, enabling us to do that. It's Amida's light shining so we can see things about our our bamboo life. It's Amida shining, so light shining so we can illuminating the teachings. It's all Amida still, but there's things we can do. We can read the teachings, and engage in Dharma dialogue. That's so key. That's so key. And engaging in Dharma discussion like this, and with a teacher, with a good someone who can act as a good teacher. It's so important. And I, up until the last couple of years, last few years. I wasn't even up until the last couple of years, even the year and a half maybe before this, before the me working with Kyokan, I was kind of getting there, somewhat, with the Dharma dialogue, but I still wasn't kind of able to be honest and just, put it all out there on the table. You know what I mean? To go to no, leaving no stone unturned to the furthest extent of my ability to do that. I just wasn't there. So before this point where I can immerse in the Dharma. There's what I mean? I can immerse myself in it. There's tons of ways to do that. And just saying Nembutsu, whether it's whatever it is, just saying the Nembutsu, it's going to work. That's part of the transmission. It's just going to work.
Yeah.
Whether no matter what the condition of my mind or how I'm doing it, or what my intentions are with doing it, saying the Nembutsu works. It will.
Oh, yes.
Amita's power is working on us through that. Amita's power as part of his transmission that we can even say the name. So just say it. I just say, saying the name, chanting the name, engaging in Dharma dialogue, having Dharma relationships. It's all parts of reading the texts, reflecting. It's all part of deep listening. Reflecting, just when I'm out for a walk or out for a run, literally listening to the Dharma. There's tons of things to do, but I couldn't quite see that. Do you know what I mean? I could in the way that I do now, in the way that Amita has enabled me to be able to see that now. And so before then, it was like, well, I kind of, they give these very specific instructions in this certain type of, Pure Land Buddhism, and there's these specific things to do. And so do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And I think that, particularly in the last few months, I've discovered the fact that just when you say the name, when you say Namo Amida Butsu, I think when you start doing that, it's like you are beginning to pick up that transmission, you're beginning to pick up that signal. And that's what's causing you to start saying, to say the name. But Amida's starting to tune you into the into the right frequency.
Yeah.
You're just beginning to start to hear it. And to you, this is just like I think something you find yourself wanting to do.
Yeah. That's
because at some deeper level, you're beginning to hear that call of Amida. But the thing that really sort of like, because I mean, I got to the point like we were discussing, like you were saying about this level of frustration where I'm thinking, okay, there must be something wrong that I'm doing. I have to look at this other Pure Land, to find out whether or not, am I, is this right?
Am I doing it right? Or is this right? Is this?
Yeah. Am I hearing the right teaching?
Yeah.
And that's where the level of, because I mean, it's not like you're wanting to walk away from Pure Land. It's that you just want to make sure, have I got this right? Am I going to truly be born in the Pure Land if I carry on this path, or am I just going to end up in this frustrating cycle of, where is my Shinjin? Do you know what I mean?
When's it gonna happen?
Yeah, quite. I meant it. But obviously you're not. If you were, then you'd already have it. But you know what I mean. So I think and this is where this is where I think when you see people, they go off to this thing or they go off to that thing, they leave Jodo Shinshu or whatever. I think it's important to realize that actually for that person, they needed to go do that to ask the questions and to find the answers. If they hadn't, then they're not really asking. I'm not suggesting that you must go off and look, but if you're at that, but I think me in particular anyway, I had to go off and find out for myself, is this right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, what happens with life after, in the afterlife, what happens at that point is, is actually, what Buddhism is all about. That's so important. And if you're
Yeah,
somebody that
exactly.
if you're somebody that realizes that, even though you may not have Shinjin and all the rest of it, but you have at least the realization, hold on, I don't want to. Do I really want to carry on this endless cycle of life, birth and death, birth and death? Do you know what I mean? If it becomes vitally important, and you want to make sure that whatever path you're on is right. Do you see what I'm guessing at? Is that making
Yeah, no,
sense?
I do. I completely do. I completely do. And I think
Yeah.
Amida uses all of that,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
is tuning us, and he he uses all of that. Nothing's wasted,
Oh, no, 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 no.
before
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in my discussions and in our weekly Dharma study. I've said that nothing's wasted.
No.
Nothing. Amida uses the whole process. Um, so when I've gone to those other Pure Land paths, we'll say in this sense, and, sticking with that kind of part of going and coming back to the Jodo Shinshu path. Um, uh, I would kind of see two things. One, it's like, actually, I can't do these. These don't are right. And also, I can't even grasp some of them. I can't. I just don't get it. Can't. How is that
Yeah, yeah.
tied to this? You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Just because I just don't have that capacity, and then or the wisdom, or I lack the wisdom, or the or the whatever it is, and then I will also see something like that. Yes, that's I'll see things in the teaching or in the practice. That's it. That's the truth. That's what Jodo Shinshu say.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's actually
Exactly.
what,
Yeah, yeah.
in essence, essentially what Jodo Shinshu is teaching. So the essence of this, the essential teaching anyway, is actually what Shinran taught and Renyo taught, and the
Yeah,
Dharma masters were
yeah.
pointing us toward. The Jodo Shinshu Dharma masters. I would even wonder. I'll just say this is a little speculation, but even the non Jodo Shinshu
Mhm.
Pure Land masters, the others that the Chinese schools acknowledge, or the Shantou lineage acknowledge, or whatever, they were pointing us toward it as well. I think. You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Oh,
I
yeah,
think,
yeah, 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 yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Mm.
But anyway, so that's what would happen with that, and it would also happen with other forms of Buddhism. I didn't just do that with Jodo Shinshu. I would say, well, there's other paths for Mappo, because I kind of was like, yeah, we're in Mappo. I can't with I got sort of I got that part, that part, Amida's illuminating Buddhist cosmology for me. I really got, in my own way, in that in my own way, I got like, okay, how the kalpas, the great kalpa, and how the kalpas work, and the ascending kalpas and the declining kalpas, and then and then when Buddhas appear, and then there's a certain period of time when their teachings are can be followed and understood, and then there's another age where that doesn't work so well, but you can kind of partly get it, and then there's an age where you can't, and it's, do you know what I mean? And that, so I get, and that we're living in the age of the five turbidities, which actually started long before now, many kalpas before now. We're actually just the tail end of the five turbidities, period, really. And Mappo is like the very tail end of that. But I got that part. I was like, okay, I can't. That's definitely part of the teaching for me. So it's so plain to see that in the world and in myself, and in. Do you see what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so that was like, okay, but there's other forms of Buddhism that other schools of Buddhism that do, are practices for this time period. So I would look at Tendai Buddhism and Nichiren Buddhism. I kept going back to them, back and forth, with a similar process. I'd say, okay, there's some things I can do. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. I'd be like,
But
I got it.
that's
You
what
know,
it comes down to, though, isn't it? I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with
yeah.
the Buddha's teaching in all those various, the various Pure Land schools and the various path of sages, as the various other Mahayana. There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's the Buddha's teaching. So if you can do it, it will work.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
have
yeah,
to
true.
my
Yeah.
stuff,
It's not like, it's not like we're exploring things that aren't, these are
yeah,
teachings from Buddhas.
yeah, yeah,
Like they're from Buddhas. Provisional though they may be, a making of provision for us though they may be, these are teachings of the Buddha way,
yeah,
from
yeah.
the Buddha, from Buddhas, like,
Mhm.
so it's not like, that's another way that there's nothing wasted,
Right,
by
right.
exploring that. And what would often happen is in those other forms of Buddhism, I would start to, because now I've got the Jodo. This is the thing, once you start to have the Jodo Shinshu Dharma eye, as it were, or Dharma view, you can't get away from it. That
No, 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 no. You've got
Amida just illuminates things, and you just can't. So I'd see it from that angle. I'd see these other teachings. Like, yeah, that makes sense, but much more from a from a kind of Jodo Shinshu, view on it. Or I'd start to see, like when I'm studying the Lotus Sutra, and always remembering, well, the Lotus Sutra was delivered at the same time as the Contemplation Sutra of Amida Buddha, and he even stopped to go stop the Lotus. I think it was, I think he stopped, or well, did he actually stop? Or did he use his Buddhist powers to do them both at the same time? But anyway,
I don't
uh,
know.
anyway, but that's just me speculating. But anyway, so um, the so I'd see the Lotus Sutra and I'd hear, the teachings in the Lotus Sutra about the eternal Buddha. That's the beginning, the beginningless Buddha, the Buddha, the original Buddha of beginningless past, and I'd be like, wait a minute, is that was, that's Amida. That's Amida. That's what that's, and then I hear the one vehicle, these different teaching about the one vehicle, but it never really says what the one vehicle is in the Lotus Sutra. It kind of just says, you know, things about the Lotus Sutra. This sutra, actually, it's like self-referent, which is kind of cool. The self-referent, self-referential sutra. But it like talks about the one vehicle, and then I'm like, the one, you know, the one vehicle is Amida's is Nembutsu. The one vehicle
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It would always, things would pop out, eventually would, um, or another nuance would, like it would, me trying to learn the Nichiren teachings or the Tendai teachings, would bring out another nuance of the Jodo teaching. You know what I mean? So it just would, and I'd also realize I couldn't do those. You eventually get to the point where you're like, okay, this is more frustrating than waiting for Shinjin. Do you know?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I barely have the discipline to even, let
Well,
alone
me
that.
neither. This is what I found. I severely lack discipline. For
Yeah,
that type of thing, and it's not like I'm deliberately lacking discipline. It's just life doesn't
yeah,
work that way.
exactly.
Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's
Well,
uh,
that's part of the times, and
yeah,
the times and beings, the teaching
right,
being in
right.
accord with times and beings. We're in the worst part of the five turbidities kalpa, man. We are in the worst part of it, and it's going to be impossible for us to even approach any kind of self-powered, teaching that requires time, requires not being distracted, requires, because it's just constant distraction, and our minds are not at the capacity to even, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is
And just think of
mine actually.
modern contemporary culture and the world, it's just, it's just
Well, one of the things that brings to my mind is the fact that Shakyamuni Buddha clearly says that there will be a time when all the other sutras and all the other Buddhist teachings will disappear, and the only one left will be the larger Pure Land Sutra. Now, I find that very, very interesting because I assume that also means that the Contemplation Sutra and the smaller Amida Sutra will disappear as well. And in these sutras, is based, with all of the various teachings and various sutras, you've got the path of sages, various Mahayana practices, but you've also got various Pure Land practices. So one day it'll all be narrowed down to just one sutra,
Yeah.
the primal vow. And and
Exactly.
that to me, that's one of the things that to me says, if that is the case, and it is, because Shakyamuni Buddha says so, then the essential of how to be born in the Pure Land is all you need to know is in the larger Pure Land Sutra. The larger Pure Land Sutra has the explanation of Dharmakara, how he became a Amida Buddha, the 48 vows, the 18th vow. So it's all going to be boiled down at the end of the day to that. There isn't going to be this range of choice of that practice, this practice, and all the rest of it. It's going to be boiled down to Namo Amida Butsu, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Is it that there's the teaching will remain in the world, and then there'll be nothing but the name. Only the name will still.
Well, actually,
or is that the same one and the same period?
But I think it's seen as pretty much one and the same because the larger Pure Land Sutra is,
I thought there was a time where the teaching still existed, just the teaching about the primal vows still existed, and then there'll be a point where just all that exists is the name. But I could be wrong.
I don't know. I just know that
it does make sense that they be together. But anyway, sorry, continue. Sorry.
As far as to my understanding, it will be boiled down to the larger Pure Land Sutra, which is about the name. It's about the primal vow and about how to.
Which is the name.
Yeah. But when you think about it, you see it. Then it makes sense that if that's all that's going to be left at the end of the day, then why not just narrow yourself down to that now?
Yeah. Exactly. And that's what would happen. With all other, this is that tuning, the tuning. Vamita, it happens with everything. It's not just other Buddhist paths that would happen with. It's science. It happens with me. It's happened with me for a long time with science, not just toward the Amida Dharma, but toward Jodo Shinshu, but toward Buddhism. I look in science, and you take the implications of different branches and different understandings of science as far as it will go. Oh yeah, that's and not even taking it very far sometimes when you just look at certain, even I'm talking about natural sciences, you just look at what they're saying, you're like, that's basically what Buddhism is saying. When you get down to the properties, the basic, you get further and further down the properties of things and the impermanence of it, and do you know what I mean? You start seeing it, the molecular level, cellular level, molecular level, subatomic level, superstring theory, all that. You start to, and you go, yeah, that's point that would point me there. And then even other religions would say, so science would say, oh yeah, that's what Buddhism is saying, only it fully says it and gives us the problem and the solution, and the same with other religions that I would, I would deeply look into other religions, deeply explore them. I was a seeker, I was a true seeker, and I would, and it would, eventually, that's what Buddhism says, and much better. The base, essentially, like not, getting rid of the specific cosmology of, the particular religion or spiritual path, getting rid of that and just looking deeply at the really higher implications of their higher teachings. And it's like, well, yeah, that's what Buddhism is saying, only better and more fully and more perfectly, So it happened even before I knew about just, the Pure Land path or even explored the Pure Land path. I knew about that for a long time because that Tricycle magazine article I read in the early 90s about Pure Land Buddhism, but kind of just read it and was like, oh, how quaint, it was sort of like, oh yes, but alas, I must attempt, I'm a person of capacity. I must attempt to, learn Zen Buddhism or Vajrayana do you know what I mean? And practice these, like I look back and I just think, oh my gosh, how completely clueless was I?
Yeah.
How completely like arrogant and like delusions of grandeur.
Same here.
Delusions
I
of
mean, same
grandeur.
here. Yeah. Yeah.
That I thought I could actually. So anyway, so I knew about following that. But anyway, but putting that aside, all other all other spiritual paths, all other scientific paths, even philosophical paths. I've explored philosophy. That was in my educational background. Western philosophy, ancient philosophy. At some point, if you look at the implications of it, the higher teachings of it, the implications of it, the ultimate implication, it's pointing you. It's like, well, that's Buddhism. That's what Buddhism's. Buddhism has the answer for you as well. To your existential angst, to your absurd, your absurdity. It has the answer.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that would just happen with Buddhism, and I think that was Amida tuning me in, starting, and then that same thing would happen once I did started. Once you got the Pure Land, view in there, it's just same thing would happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
All part of the tuning. The tuning.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah, and yeah, similarly for me, I've tried all kinds of different spiritual paths and religions and whatnot, and but in the end, Buddhism was the one that is the only one that actually made real sense. I couldn't pick it apart like I could with the other ones. There were just little things in there which didn't really make sense. But I started coming across Buddhism and reading about causes and conditions and whatnot. And this is one of the things I absolutely love about Jodo Shinshu, is that, and in the one hand, you've got this almost amazing, fantastical place that you'll go to one day. It sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings or something like that. But at the same time, there's this huge amount of practicality about the whole thing, of this down to earth thing, like talking about in this definition of calculation here. When you really look at it and you spend some time thinking about it and look at and think about what you can and honestly can and can't do, there's a sense of practicality, and because this is the practical reality of the thing. You have to, Amida is really the only option here. It's very much with Buddhism in the whole, and with Jodo Shinshu and Pure Land in general, really, there's a very much a down to earth practicality. It makes sense. Do you know what I mean? In a way that I couldn't really find in other spiritual paths, in other religions. There seemed to be something about it. In some of them, it promises you things which are just somewhere out there, in this life. Whereas, in Buddhism, there is no such promise. It tells you this is what, it almost agrees with you. Life is like this, and you can. And I think this is what draws a lot of people to Buddhism in the first place, is that they hear the Buddha saying things like, life is suffering. Exactly. I mean, he's not trying to be.
That's the starting point. That's the.
And your ears pick up and you think, actually, you know what? That's quite right. Do you know what I mean? It meets you where you are. Buddhism meets you exactly where you are. It's anyway. This is why
it does. No, that's it. It doesn't. It doesn't. It says, it calls this life what it is. In a very detailed way. And the more you look at it, the more you're like, yeah, that's how it is. That's how it is. Even just sticking with our kind of let's call it our Jambudvipa, existence, earthly existence, and that just pointing out what that's about, and then going out further to the rest of the cosmology, as much as you can understand it.
That's just it.
That makes sense. It just makes perfect sense. But it's all. It doesn't tell you it's a rose garden. It doesn't tell you this is a good creation. It doesn't tell you it's a good creation that you should be thankful for. You know, what I mean? It tells you this is a creation of our ignorance. This is a creation of our ignorance and our karma.
Right,
you know,
right.
individually and collectively, and we deserve it.
Well, this is why I like to say that Buddhism isn't a path of blind faith, because everything that it teaches can be experienced with direct experience yourself. And eventually what happens when you start to, when you hear the Buddha's teaching on this, that, and the other, and you find that that's absolutely true, then you just start to trust everything the Buddha says, including this idea of pure lands. And do you know what I mean? If you got this bit right, then the rest of it must be true as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like this natural process.
Yes, you can trust. You've learned part of the map, and then that you don't know what's off the map. No. You can trust that the map maker, is you can trust. Yeah, I heard a Buddhist teacher talk about that at one point. That how can you how can we approach these things about Buddhist cosmology that we can't really experience, we can't really see for ourselves, and if you trust the map maker, if you trust your part of the map, and you that's right, then you can probably trust the portions that are beyond the map that you can see, or beyond, or you can trust the map that's there, that you've not been to those other places, those other continents, as it were. You've not been to those other quarters or those other quadrants of the map, as it were. There's other directions, but what you can verify your own existence in this one part of the part of the map you're on. So you can trust that those other parts of the map are accurate. That sort of thing. And then obviously Amida illuminating it. So that's why I chose the lamppost, the Dharma Initiative lamppost symbol, the lamppost station, as my background. Thought that was the most appropriate. The light, the lamppost of Amida, the ultimate lamppost station of Amida, shining his light to us all. But the ultimate Dharma Initiative of Amida. But we were talking about the way that a Buddhist teaching is delivered in itself engenders trust, because it doesn't it gives you what is in front of you. That's what it points you to, and it's verifiable, and you can then we have, like I said, Amida illuminating it. So it's very different. It's different than other religions, I think, in that sense.
I've certainly not come across anything like it. I've looked at, got involved with a few different paths and whatnot, but nothing quite like this. Nothing even remotely like this, actually. It is really that different.
It definitely is. Do you want to read some more of this? Paragraph.
We get to the.
So that's what we left off, right? Shall I read, or do you want to read? You continue reading. Yeah.
Okay. As true entrusting arises wholly from other power, the practice is completely passive. Even seeking to know oneself as evil or to rid oneself of Hikari in order to accord with the primal vow is itself Hikari. And all such effort is futile and self-defeating. This is the paradox of student practice of faces. Said earlier.
It's the koan, man. It's the koan out of our Jodo Shinshu lives.
Well, there's a sound of one hand clapping. The admonition against the Hikari does not mean, however, that one must renounce the aspiration for enlightenment and do nothing at all. It may be said that the desire for birth arises truly only with Shinjin, and that prior to realization of Shinjin, it is overshadowed by attachment to this world. Nevertheless, aspiration, even prior to realization of Shinjin, leads one to listen to the teaching in earnest confrontation of the problem of emancipation. Such listening will at some point be transformed into hearing, which Shinran explains. To hear means to hear the
Okay, good. Sorry.
to hear means to hear the primal vow and be free of doubt, i.e. Hikari. Further, it indicates Shinjin. That's from notes on once calling and many calling. This,
Boom.
yeah.
Yeah. Should we just talk about this one for a second?
Yeah. Actually,
so,
I've got a very similar verse to,
to that one.
Yeah. To hear the name is to hear the name that embodies the primal vow. Hear means to hear the primal vow and be free of doubt. Further, it indicates Shinjin. Is that the same one that we just read? Yes, it is.
So here, yeah, I think it is. Yeah, you ended up finding the same. Well, you're in good company.
No wonder that passage.
The scholars that put this together. That's where this is where they brought them to. So you're doing okay, Notion. You're doing.
I wonder why that sounded familiar. It was more like.
So let me just read. I got to read that again. That first part. As true and trusting arises wholly from other power, the practitioner is completely passive. Even seeking to know oneself as evil or to rid oneself of Hakurai in order to accord with the primal vow is itself Hakurai, and all such effort is futile and self-defeating. So freaking frustrating. The practitioner is completely passive. No freaking way. It can't be that easy. It can't be that simple. I gotta have something to do.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. This is the paradox the Shin Buddhist, the Shin practitioner faces. That when you were reading those first two sentences, I was like, "Yep, there's that. That's the koan. That's the koan that drives us nuts when we first, come around, and for a long time after that, in my case, because." And then it says, this is the paradox the Shin practicer faces. I like how they use the word practicer. Did you notice that in the translation? They don't use practitioner.
Perhaps,
Like most other whenever that's a Buddhist practitioner, do you know what I mean? They use practicer. And I wonder whether there's a subtle nuance there going on. Because like we're not really practitioners. Like we're not in that traditional Buddhist sense.
In many respects, we're not even practicers either. I mean,
this kind of says practicer is kind of it's a more relaxed, lesser sounding. You know what I mean? It's not like we're not really practice. It's no working is true working. Something I noticed, and I always meant to kind of highlight at some point in discussion that subtle difference between the use of practitioner and practicer in this whole in the whole Shinran works. It seems like that is anyway, at least what I've read of it and I've noticed. Anyway, so and then I'll just read the admonition against Hakurai does not mean, however, that one must renounce the aspiration for enlightenment and do nothing at all. It may be so. That's a key thing. It may be said that the desire for birth arises truly only with Shinjin, and that prior to realization of Shinjin, it is overshadowed by attachment to this world. So that first part of that, it may be said, admonition against Hakurai does not mean, however, that one must renounce the aspiration for enlightenment and do nothing at all. So, I think this kind of speaks to what we're talking about here, about nothing being wasted.
Yeah.
In Jodo Shinshu, we're I think in Buddhism in general, there's a relaxation. If people come to Buddhism and they come benefit, they're going to benefit from it. No matter if they leave, they'll have benefited. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they come back or they decide to stay, they'll have been benefited. You know what I mean? Even the Buddha talks about that. Buddha That was in the Buddhist teaching, actually. Let them come, whatever path they're from. Let them come,
Yeah,
whatever
let them come
religion.
and go, because one
Let
way
them
or the
come.
other, you know.
If they want to practice
Yeah.
and do this with us in the way that we do it, and then they decide they want to become, great. If they want to leave, it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? There's
And
no. So
this
it's
is
a
why.
similar, I think, in Buddhism. That's kind of our attitude, because it won't be the because of upaya, nothing's wasted. Because of the upaya of Amida and upaya of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, nothing's wasted. And especially in Jodo Shinshu, I think it's part of the process that you explore other things.
Well, that's just it, because I mean, Jodo Shinsho, for that matter, any form of Buddhism is not a cult. There shouldn't be a situation where someone's trying to, prevent you from, because it could well be that you need to come and go, so to speak, many times before you finally get it.
Exactly.
And it wouldn't happen for you any other way. This is, Amida dealing with you on a one-on-one basis. Do you know what I mean? And this needs to happen as part of the process. To try and, it's a bit like what Shinman talks about, where he says, "I have no disciples." In other words, he fully recognizes that whoever comes to hear the teaching has been led there by Amida in the first place.
Exactly.
And they are not his disciples; they are the disciples of Amida Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha, not people's disciples. So you have to have that. I think it's important to sort of like, because sometimes you hear some criticism of people coming and going and this, that, or the other, and merely no, that's what they need to do, and really that needs to be allowed to happen. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I do. It's kind of like, I'm just thinking. There's so many, as we've been going along, I've been thinking of all kinds of metaphors and analogies from Lost.
Oh, like yeah.
Some of the islanders finally left the island. They realized they needed to come back. They realized they really needed to come back. Actually, we need to go back. We're not done. It's not done. It's not. Yeah. Or I was thinking earlier, of Amida. I was talking this whole time about Amida tuning us in and his Hakurai. Thinking of Jacob always being there at the right moment in all the lives of the different candidates. For you know what I mean? They're going to be guardian, and Joey's there at the right moment to do the right thing. Kind of like Amida's good from the past. We're in Opaya, just at the right moment, at the right time, to do the right thing, to steer us in the right direction without us even knowing it. Before we even know it.
Yeah.
So many different things. And the light. The light of the island. Sorry, this is all just rattling off, but the light of the light of the island. The essence of is basically the essence of the true essence of existence is what that kind of is symbolic of. Kind of like almost like Dharma nature. You know what I mean? Loosely speaking, I'm being really loosely. I'm not saying that. But I think the writers and things kind of had some.
Definitely, definitely.
Using different. Even Taoism, you could bring Taoism into that, the thing with the light, and then the the yin yang of the the two sides. Anyway, but that's anyway. I just there's definitely a lot of Buddhist symbolism in Lost. The 108, the iterations of every 108 minutes, they had to enter the numbers. Almost like a chant, almost like what I mean. 108. And they had to enter the numbers. The 108. You know what I mean? And then there's 48 passengers.
Yeah.
I always thought that was quite interesting. The original 48 passengers.
Yeah.
Why'd they choose that number? 48. I thought that was quite interesting. So, and tons of other on the wheel, the frozen wheel. Like I was like, that's the Dharma wheel. You can see the light. The light when Ben is turning you can see the light emanating from the crack. As he's turning the wheel to move the island. But it's just like that's so. They just use so much Buddhist. And obviously the Dharma initiative. All that. There's so much Buddhist symbolism in the show. But anyway, coming back to, sorry, I digress, as I do. And we come back. Just like we do in Jodo Shinshu. We digress, we come back.
Yeah.
So, but
Absolutely.
it's never wasted. It's never
No.
Amita's using that. It's a part of the process. I'm convinced now.
Yeah,
It's
me too.
absolutely part of the
I am
process.
definitely convinced
And
now.
you
Yeah,
should
yeah, yeah.
encourage. I mean, the Shakyamuni himself said, study broadly, test everything, test what I'm, test test that this is the gold that I'm giving you. You know what I mean? Test it, for yourself. I mean, so I just think not only should we be patient and tolerant, but almost encouraging in a way. Like if that's, this is the teaching, but if that's what you need to do, that could very well be a part of your,
Yeah.
the upaya process, the working of the jinin, the natural working of the vow to bring you, to bring you
Absolutely.
Setul Chinjin.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely go along with everything you just said.
Yeah. It's like the opposite of how I used to think about it. I used to feel so bad every time I strayed,
Yeah.
from the Jodo Shinshu path. I feel like, oh, and then I come back and be like, oh yeah, this is right. But I feel kind of bad, you know what I mean? But now I look back and I'm like, I don't feel bad because I can clearly see it's part of the pro. I can clearly see it's the upaya of Amida. I can clearly see that's what I need to do. That's what in the Anita, nothing wasted. Nothing wasted.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think really you have to be comfortable with what you're in, and
Yeah.
I don't think there's any point in trying to force yourself to stay in something which ultimately doesn't fit you. So, do you know what I mean? If I mean, it may not be like a permanent thing, but if, for example, okay, I'm not getting on very well with this Jodo Shinshu idea, so I'm going to go try this, and for a time, it could well be that's where you feel the most comfortable. Do you know what I mean? There's no point
Exactly.
in trying to, you have to be, happy inside yourself or whatever. And this is the great thing about Buddhism is that it has something for everybody, Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whatever, like I say, whatever world you're in, whatever dimension you're in, whatever universe you're in, whatever type of being you are, in whatever realm you're in, it has something for us all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Every last one of us in every single one of our karmic causes and conditions.
And you even got a variety
uniquely suited to it.
Right. And you even got a variety of Pure Land.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And they all work if you could do them.
And they each have their own vow.
Yeah.
They each have their own vow.
So so I mean, literally, the Buddhas and Amida Buddha has covered it all. It's
all bases.
Just absolutely brilliant. But anyway, yeah.
And the thing is, what you were just saying, you said it has to be. It has to be satisfactory to you.
Yes. Yeah.
It has to sit right with you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how many people in Jodo Shinshu are confident this is the teaching.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or how many people in Buddhism this are confident. It has to sit right with you.
Yeah.
And Shinran himself says this teaching is for me alone.
Mm-hmm.
So if this teaching is for me alone, then it has to be satisfactory. It has to have satisfactory. It has to sit well with me. It has to have satisfactory explanation and satisfactory understanding and satisfactory delivery and it has to be good at the beginning, good at the end, good in the middle, good in the end, as they say, as said of it. Good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end for me.
Mm-hmm.
The whole, so, and until that happens, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you hear about this town or something, and you think, okay, I'll go visit it. And it's not until, okay, I'm living here, but there's this town about 30 miles down the road. It sounds quite good, but I'm not going to know which. I can look at the pictures. I can look at the pictures all day long about how wonderful the hills are in this town and that's how wonderful the shops are. But until I actually go and take a look, I'm not going to know. And I think, if you're frustrated at where you are right now, then sometimes maybe you just need to go take a look. Did you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And your curiosity is not going to be satisfied. The pictures, what you're hearing, is not going to satisfy that curiosity until you've actually gone there.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Exactly. 100%. The pictures do not do it justice. You must experience it for yourself. They might attract you. They might go, ooh, I want to be there. I want to go there. So that's a good.
But only by going there do you find out whether or not you really want to be there.
Exactly. I want to check it out. Check it out. So, yeah, it's pretty. Clear that that's kind of how this works.
Yeah.
So, shall we read the rest of this?
Yes. Yeah.
I can get the control back. Here we go. So, you want to read to here again?
Okay. There we go. Yep. To hear means to hear the primal vow and be free of doubt, i.e., Hikari. It's interesting. I'm sorry to quickly to stop there. It's interesting how it's put in brackets next to doubt, i.e., Hikari, calculation and doubt being.
Yes. To hear the primal vow and be free of doubt.
And Hikari as being calculation. So if you've got a calculation, then you have doubt.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, doubt and calculation, it's the same. Yeah, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah. This hearing, which is the realization of Shinjin, is not simply to receive the verbal teaching, but to experience with one's entire being the very reality of the primal vow. As you would put it, boom.
Boom.
When great compassion awakens one to its working, one is freed from the bonds of one's own Hikari. Conversely, when one's calculative thinking is made to fall away, all is seen to have been Amida's working.
This is what we've been talking about here.
That's all time. Yeah.
It's all Amida's working. Ultimately, all these that's coming and going and checking things out, and and then being pointed back to.
But that part is so important. But to experience one's entire being, very reality, experience it.
Yes.
I mean, this is real. This is really real.
Exactly.
And I think this is one of the problems with I've seen a lot with various spirituality in or outside of Buddhism, is that it become very, very dry. Nobody's really experiencing anything. It all becomes like a philosophy or a head knowledge type thing.
Yes.
And so it becomes dry,
or a virtue signal.
We can stop, saying in the books or whatever, because why? It's just an intellectual exercise anyway. So it has to be a direct experience, a direct encounter with. Do you see what I'm getting at? There's a difference between when you really experience, like what this is talking about, and when you're just sort of like, it's just.
Yeah, exactly. And that, to me, that says it becomes real.
Yeah.
It's got to be real for me alone. You know what I mean? The teachings for it's got to be real. It's got to be real, and that's when it becomes real. That's when it really, that's talking about that moment when it becomes real. Yeah. And the equivalent of hearing without doubt, the hearing without doubt is Shinjin.
Yeah.
When hearing without calculation. Hearing without calculation.
Yeah.
When it's all Amida's calculation, that is Shinjin. And I can't calculate that out. You know what I mean?
No.
I can't say, well, do I meet the three, the three requirements? Do I meet the? Do you know what I mean? Like I can't. Well, then I must have Shinjin. Do you see what I mean? Like I almost see that as a form of calculation.
Yeah.
You have to go through. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and you do that. I've done that so many times. I thought, yes, okay, I managed to tick all the boxes. Therefore, I must have Shinjin.
Yeah.
3 days later, I don't have.
The question is, do you entrust to Amida? Do you you trust in me? You wish to be born in his land? Do you say Nembutsu? And do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I've done this.
Well, that sounds like faith to me. It sounds like calculation to me.
I've done that so many times. You know, I am. But you do that because you know it's frustration and desperation.
Yeah.
Oh, come on,
You want something concrete. You want it
Yeah, yeah,
you want it to be
yeah,
happening. You want it to be true so bad.
yeah,
That's another aspect of
yeah,
this,
yeah,
that frustration. You want it to be true so bad. You want to
yeah,
experience that so badly. Just that, no doubt. It's not like I'm trying to, like, I think I'm going to go be launched into the fourth dimension of existence or something. It's not like that like I'm suddenly going to be this, suddenly going to be this, I don't know, cleared mind stream. And then I don't believe any of that. I don't think it's anything like that. You know what I mean? It's not like it's, but to be hearing with no doubt, have no doubt and no calculations, and it to all be Amita's calculation at that point. That's, do you know what I mean? Just that alone, without any other benefits.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Is monumental. And then you go to the 10 benefits,
yeah,
in this life, and the 10 benefits when we are born in Pure Land. And you know what I mean? Like, and the transformative nature, of Shinjin, of this process, I'll call it, of Jinin, the transformative nature. There is a transformative nature of it. You do in the process of it, and in Shinjin, you naturally want to turn away from evil. So it's
yeah.
not like nothing changes about it. This process has changed me
Oh,
in
yeah.
more powerful and distinct and evidentiary ways that no other path, no other religion, no other philosophy, no other method has changed me. So there is something transformed. It's not like nothing happens.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
you're just going to wind up the same old, do you know what I mean? You're still going to be a bamboo, but you're going to be a very different one. You are going to be transformed.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not like we're going to be transformed into some kind of, like I said, cleared mind stream and calm and sagely person. No, that's not what the transformation of Jinin and Shinjin is about. It doesn't, but naturally turning away from naturally wanting to turn away from evil, yes.
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to? No, but we'll naturally want to, and we'll naturally be enabled by Amita to try to, and to successfully do it through Amita, but to a certain degree. But we won't be free of blind passions. We won't be free of our ignorance. We won't be free of our karma, not until the end of life. The plant, the roots are cut by Amita, but the plant lives on until we die. We have to live out our karma. We have to endure it, monk, like he's told, like with the Buddha told Angulimala, endure. We still have to endure, until, but we can be born man walking.
Right.
We can be born men walking.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, so, well, I think we reached the end of this. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about this paragraph? Or?
Just very briefly, because we talked about all this. So then, what do we do? If anything at all, what do we do? And there's this passage. It's actually a quote from the Sayings of Renyo, which Aikin Kobai Sensei uses in his book. I think it's Understanding Jodo Shinshu, which I came across the other day, and this is quoting from Sayings of Renyo.
Okay.
It says,
"Do you want to share it? Do you want to share it?
It's actually
I've enabled sharing. I'll just stop sharing. I've enabled sharing. So go ahead.
It's actually from our group chat. I put it in there. So I won't share this.
Right. Okay. No. Fine. That's fine then. Yeah. Go ahead.
I can share what it says.
Say what it says. Yeah.
Renyo Shonen, it says, regardless of our doubts, if we listen intently with our entire being, we will be given Shinjin because of great compassion. The Buddhist teaching begins and ends in hearing.
Yeah. Read it again, please. Read it again. One more time.
Regardless of our doubts, if we listen intently with our entire being, we will be given Shinjin because of great compassion. The Buddhist teaching begins and ends in hearing.
Yeah. sort of says in a different way what we've just been reading about in that
Mm.
definition. And again, that with one's whole being
Yeah, yeah.
is where it's happening.
It's listening,
It's
and so you're
happening with
finding,
one's whole being.
yeah,
Listening with not just with my ears, not just with my eyes, not just with my, it's my whole
yeah.
being. And true compassion,
Mm.
great compassion enables that.
But it's interesting. It says, regardless of our doubts.
Yes, that's the thing. Oh yeah, that's another thing with this tuning.
Mm.
There's, you know, there's something I've come to realize that helped me relax quite a bit is before I would always think, well, I have to ask every single question that I have in exact, excruciating detail, and I have to express my doubts exactly as they are, and every one of them has to, every question has to be answered, and every doubt has to be answered and discussed out, and and then every barrier has to be expressed, and I have to, do you know what I mean? Like, but I realized, and that has to happen in discussion, and like, what I realized is a different. It's just the process of the dialogue, whether it actually gets answered but between you and that good the person that's acting as a good teacher, whether that actually whether it's actually completely answered or not isn't. Amida is going to resolve the questions. Amida is going to answer. Amida is going to resolve the doubts. Amida is going to remove the barriers. Amida is going to clear. Amida is going to clear the channels of faith.
Yeah, yeah.
This is just my Dharma dialogue, and talking about and asking, expressing these things is just, that's another form of Amida's working. That's just another. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I'm never gonna get this. It'd be endless. My questions and doubts and my barriers would be endless. I'm a bamboo. So it's not going to be me resolving that, or the person acting as a good teacher resolving that. It's going to be Amida. It's going to be Amida's working that resolves that, and answers doubts, answers all the questions, resolves all the doubts, removes all the barriers. And that helped me relax quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. But that does give a specific, and that I remember when I finally read that passage and really heard it. That changed a lot of my. I did a video on that one, a lot, just that with Jokan. I was like, what really is deep listening? And then we would list all these things. And we talked. I said, but then I found this passage. I think this, what's the approach? How should we approach? I know all the activities you do, but what's the approach? What's the essence of this? And that's passage I found of Renyo's, that saying of Renyo's was like, boom.
Yeah.
And it changed my whole, it's just, it's just, I used to think about the Lotus Sutra that if you just read it, it like will rewire you, it just rewires your, but now I think the same thing about, the Jodo Shinshu teaching. Once you really hear something, it starts rewiring, and
yeah.
or it's Amida's rewiring you, as you in the whole process of it. So, but yeah, so really great discussion.
Amazing.
Thanks and congratulations on re-embracing your Dharma name, similar to what I did. With mine. Congratulations. It's wonderful. It's wonderful thing. Though I also thought I also was congratulatory of your Dharma name you received through the Chinese, through the it was a Shantao language, right?
No. It was the 13 patriarchs.
13 patriarchs language. Okay. But you received the Dharma name through that.
Yes.
As well, which I sounds wonderful. And I loved how our group was a perfect example. Our weekly Dharma discussion. There was no question that you'd remain a part of that.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was no question to me. Like it just wasn't even and then we just, while you were exploring that, we just discussed it. We just discussed.
Yeah, that's right.
Discussed Jodo Shinshu teaching. We discussed that Pure Land teaching. Do you know what I mean? And it was part of the process because
absolutely.
I accept that's part of the process. That's a perfect example. Quite recently, from our, how it should be handled. How those comings and goings should be,
And I have absolutely no criticism at all for the, the Chinese Pure Land,
Yeah.
13 Patriarchs. These are serious guys and they know what they're talking about. But it goes to show, though, that the Buddha's teaching, it works. The question is simply, can you do it? For me,
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
the question. But it goes to show that the vows are all very much the 19th, 20th, are very much in operation, and this is it's all brilliant. It's all brilliant.
Yeah, it is. And that's one of the difficulties is we have there's no test.
No.
There's nothing. There's no test of definitively says this is who you are as a bamboo. This is the right path for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no, like we don't have, I don't know, I'm thinking of like another Buddhist, like we don't have a test for who we are as bamboo. Like I'm thinking of the test, like the lamas, like the Tibetan, the Vajrayana lamas, they do that. They have that thing where they keep items from the previous birth of the lama, and they, and through their various practices, they figure out who the next lama is, who the new rebirth of that same lama is, and they present like his his ritual implements, along with other things to see. They put it on the table to see what he'll touch, to confirm his identity as the new rebirth of the
similar to that scene on Lost. I
was just thinking that in Lost, there's that moment with Locke, with John Locke, where the immortal guy, I can't remember his name, the immortal guy with the dark hair,
Isaac,
I can't remember his name. That became, he kind of worked with Jacob for a while, and then he was part of the others, and he insinuated himself into the others, and worked with Ben, but anyway, there's a point where in Locke's childhood, where
all these things.
He presents different, some, and one of them even is like a bell. I think is like a ritual bell, and then other things, a rope or something. I can't remember. He presents as John Locke as a child to see if he'll, identify, and ultimately he doesn't. Ultimately, he picks the wrong thing, and the immortal guy gets really frustrated and leaves or whatever. I was thinking that as I was talking, I was like, there's another lost thing. But anyway, there's no test, for us. There's no test of other than the process of Amita's working itself, and Amita showing us that you know what I mean? There's nothing we can do to test it. Amita in time just needs to do, through his natural working of the vow, show us, illuminate, change, steer us in the right direction, tune us in. So, well, I think we covered it. I think this discussion has gone on for as long as it had to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The rules of Shaku Brothers.
Yeah.
Inspired by Fight Club. Yeah. This discussion has gone on for as long as it had to. So, excellent. So, well, thank you very much. Shall we?
It's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. Yeah.
Same. Absolute pleasure. I just need to get something ready in a moment. And anyway, so just bear with me a sec. I just want to, we will say Nembutsu, I think, shall we?
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'll just quickly share something before we leave.
Okay.
Okay. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Namo Amida Butsu. So great. Just will take us out with this. Take care, my friend. No more me to put through.
Bye.
All the best.